is that we know and we've seen time and again, you got to educate yourself on Bitcoin. And then the second you do, we all orange pill ourselves. And it looks like you've got plenty of reading material back there that seems to do the trick. I want to start this morning talking about our breaking news that we had at the top of the show. Specifically, Jerome Powell came out and basically just admitted that rate cuts are underway. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. With September now looking like a lock for rate cuts, how do you see that playing into Bitcoin's short-term price action going forward into the month of September?
So Bitcoin is interesting. I mean, obviously similar to gold, but obviously digital and reacting with a lot greater volatility than gold. It's going to see that liquidity and sniff it out and definitely rise. I mean, I'm looking at this ginormous candle on the 4 hour right now, up almost 4% on the day, and so clearly it's sniffing that out. It's seeing that we're going to have rates start to drop. I actually posted on X, I believe it was yesterday. I kind of suspected it was going to be a sell the rumor, buy the news, kind of a flip of what it typically is in TradFi, because I was really seeing big Bitcoin treasury companies, which I follow pretty closely, like the MicroStrategies and Metaplants of the world, really all kind of taking a shellacking in the past couple of weeks. And then now I see a lot of them all starting to turn around. I'm seeing the Bitcoin miners turn around and react regressively. So I suspect that this reduction in rates is really going to put a risk on feel back into Bitcoin risk assets.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with you. And we probably shouldn't be too surprised that we were kind of waiting for these Bitcoin treasuries to see some more of that volatility that we've experienced from Bitcoin in the future, given how closely tied they are. So really no surprise there. And with Bitcoin back riding the wave in a positive fashion, it's not surprising to see those follow suit as well. Now, the Fed has this tricky thing they got to do, which is trying to balance a weakening labor market with sticky inflation due to Donald Trump's tariffs. Do you think Bitcoin thrives in a more weaker dollar environment, or does persistent inflation actually kind of complicate that narrative a little bit?
It's interesting. I mean, I think if you think about like long run, the way the whole monetary system is, where we have a debt-based money system, we've pushed rates to near zero, right? In the ZIRP era after the great financial crisis, they really have nowhere else to go but up. So to my knowledge, I'm not really surprised to see long run rates start to increase. We're going to have long run inflation. There's just not much you can do about it. We've printed 30% of the money that ever existed in the last 5 years. So that's got to go somewhere. That's going to find its way into obviously risk assets, real estate, all kinds of things that people want to buy. So inflation's here to stay. I mean, I think that the idea that we're going to get back down to a 2% inflation rate, it's a dream. In fact, it's funny. I actually remember listening to an interview with Anthony Pompliano a few years ago, talking about, I think eventually the Fed's going to have to move their 2% target to a 3%. I don't think they'll actually do that verbally, but it's going to happen tacitly, right? And that's what's going to happen. Bitcoin, though, is still going to, I think, react very, very favorably, because as we see rates come down, we're going to see more liquidity. I was listening to Bloomberg a little bit earlier today, and there was some talk about stopping the runoff of the balance sheet for the Federal Reserve. So, as you know, they've grown their balance sheet by trillions of dollars over the recent years, and they've been slowly trying to let assets roll off their balance sheet. I'm sure they're going to stop that, and then before you know it, they're going to have to probably start growing the balance sheet again. That liquidity is going to have to find a place to go, and it's going to find its way into QQQ, it's going to find its way into the SPY, and it's going to find its way into Bitcoin.
Yeah, and we're seeing it this morning. I mean, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of those are ripping. Meme coins even seem to be getting a nice little pump. And stocks are ripping to all-time highs, like literally the second after Powell opened his mouth. And treasuries, well, they kind of cratered today. Do you think that Bitcoin right now is trading more like a high beta risk asset in these moments, or is it kind of slowly maturing into its own macro hedge?
It's going to take more time, I think, for Bitcoin to really trade what I think it is. What I think, and what most, I think, followers of Bitcoin believe it is it's the ultimate risk-off, low-risk asset to hold. Because they're really looking at the monetary system that we are in, this debt-based monetary system, as being far more fragile than I think what the news media and others are letting on. So as a result, it's the safest place to be. It can't be controlled. It can't be debased. It's limited to 21 million coins. All of those things that Bitcoiners know, the broader market doesn't yet understand. So long term, it is, I think, the safe haven asset like gold has been for the last 5,000 years. Today, it continues to trade as risk on, right? So it does trade, I think, as beta, especially to tech stocks like the QQQs, Tesla, the Mag 7, et cetera. But there's going to be a time. There's going to be a time where that switch is going to flip and folks are going to start figuring that out.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that happen slowly but surely. If you look at Bitcoin's volatility this year, it is so much more subdued than we've seen in previous cycles. So it's kind of funny how it has been traditionally considered a risk-on asset, but those like you and I that have done their research know that this will be the digital gold, the gold of the future. So we are seeing that, I think, slowly but surely up and to the right. 16 years we've got right on track record right now, and it seems to continue to do so. Back to Powell. During his speech this morning, he made a big point about Fed independence, even as Donald Trump threatens Fed governors on the sidelines here. Do you think Bitcoin's whole outside the system pitch gets stronger the more political the Fed looks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we think that the Federal Reserve and the whole central banking system is not political, then you're probably not paying attention. I mean, everything that has to do with DC, Wall Street, they're all political. I mean, political is just, that's human nature. So Bitcoin continues, I think, to thrive. I mean, you've seen Larry Fink out there pounding the pavement with the spot Bitcoin ETFs, talking about it as, a hedge if you're worried about your currency, you're worried about your government, you're worried about inflation, you're worried about deficits that your government is running, and all of those kinds of things. And so as folks start to see that, and we've seen, record inflows, right? The IBIT ETF's been one of the best performing ETFs in history in the United States. And so clearly that message is resonating. You're seeing, sovereign wealth funds acquiring either Bitcoin through ETFs, or they're acquiring Bitcoin exposure through things like Strategy Inc., formerly MicroStrategy. You're seeing, central banks start to do the same. You're seeing endowments, retirement funds start to move into Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related treasuries. So, clearly people are seeing, at least the smart money is starting to see like, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to be able to get our way out of this. If you think the government's going to pay off its debt, like that's not going to happen. We're in a debt-based system. If you pay off the debt, the money disappears, and banks collapse. Right. So we don't want that. So they're gonna continue. The debt's gonna keep growing. Deficits are gonna keep growing. And so Bitcoin is not a hedge against inflation. It's really, I think, a hedge against the whole monetary system.
Because Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who we've been talking about all morning, President Donald Trump, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent are sitting on $863 billion secret. A newly published Fed paper all but spells it out. The U.S. has been lying about its gold holdings since 1973, and that accounting trick could bankroll Trump's Bitcoin ambitions. The Fed study is called Official Reserve Revaluations, the International Experience, which is a polite way of saying, here's how broke countries revalue gold to pretend that they're not broke. The paper examines examples like Germany, and buried in the footnote is Cynthia Lumley's revaluation, there she is, to fund a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. Now that bill matches Trump's stated goal, 1 million Bitcoin to make the U.S. the world's crypto superpower. The numbers are staggering. America's official gold price is around $42 an ounce, the Nixon era fiction that still is on the books. Actual gold trades around $3,400 an ounce, which means the U.S. balance sheet shows $11 billion in gold when the real value is around $874 billion. That's off by a factor of 80. Now, that's $863 billion gap is big enough to buy Denmark and Portugal and still have cash left to fund Finland's national sauna habit. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently posted about budget-neutral ways to buy Bitcoin. In Washington, budget neutral means we found hidden money we swore didn't exist. Bessent denies plans to revalue gold. He told Bloomberg earlier this year that's not what he had in mind. And then the Fed publishes a literal instruction manual on gold revaluation. This comes as Trump wants 1 million Bitcoin. The U.S. already has about 200,000 Bitcoin from seizures. That leaves 800,000 to buy, costing about $92 billion. Exactly the kind of cash you'd free up by revaluing Fort Knox. The politics are messy. The Constitution says only Congress can revalue gold. The president can't do it with the Truth Social post, believe it or not. Lummis's bill is ready, but admitting America has been lying about money for 50 years is not exactly a winning midterm slogan. The economics, well, they are kind of ugly. The U.S. has $37 trillion in debt. The dollar is down 11% this year. Its worst showing since 1973. And if gold is revalued, Treasury yields could spike to 7% or more. That means mortgages jump, savings lose 30% overnight, and your 401k suddenly looks like a horror film. Meanwhile, China and Russia, who have been hoarding gold like preppers hoard canned beans, win either way. If the U.S. revalues, their reserves explode in value. America validates their anti-dollar strategy while making them absolutely rich. The real problem, though, is admitting the original sin. You see, Nixon killed Bretton Woods in 1971, claimed the Fed's steady hand would replace gold. Then the Watergate tapes revealed Nixon telling the Fed to goose the money supply. Since then, the dollar has lost 98.7% of its value against gold. Every Treasury Secretary since has protected that lie like it's a state secret, because admitting it would be like the Pope admitting God doesn't exist. Just too big to fail. Now, with debt exploding and dollars imploding, the lie has no road left. Strip it down, and here's the truth. We're not hiding $863 billion. We're hiding the fact that fiat money is a 50-year Ponzi scheme. And Bitcoin is the exit ramp. All right, we're bringing back Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, turns out America still values its gold at $42 an ounce, which is basically monopoly money. Is this really a hidden $863 billion war chest or just creative accounting on steroids? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's definitely creative accounting. I mean, what would be the rationale, to keep Bitcoin keep gold, analog Bitcoin as $42 an ounce on the balance sheet, right? And the rationales that I've certainly heard is, hey, gold's not important anymore. Fiat currency is enough after 1971. Don't look over there, look over here at the mighty dollar, right? That's going to stay strong. And obviously that was not the case. So this seems like a pretty emergency break glass type of a call that could be made. Is let's revalue the gold, and then now what do we want to do with that? Do we want to pay down the deficit? Do we want to acquire a hard asset like Bitcoin? Are we truly on a kind of monetary order reset, as Scott Bessent talked about before he became Treasury Secretary last year? A lot of questions on the table. I think another interesting question is, do they revalue the gold just to current price, right? I mean, if you look at the current price of gold at $3,300 an ounce, or do they revalue it to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000? You can revalue to whatever you want to try to plug the hole on our balance sheet. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what they end up doing with it. But I think eventually they're going to have to do this. They'll have no choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. But let's say, for instance, let's play a little theoretical game here. If Uncle Sam actually started using that $863 billion to buy Bitcoin, do you think we're talking smooth accumulation or a Black Friday stampede at Walmart kind of market chaos? What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I tend to think that they would probably move pretty thoughtfully and cautiously, but this is the government we're talking about, so it's hard to say. I mean, certainly an immediate, just a slam purchase of that much Bitcoin all at once is going to just drive the price into the stratosphere. I mean, that's not at all priced in. Now you could be talking hundreds of thousands of dollars per Bitcoin overnight. Is that really something that they're going to do? No. Plus, I think, what message would that send to broader markets, to other central banks, to global markets? I think it would create an absolute panic. So my guess is it's probably more of a gradual thing, or maybe some of it goes into Bitcoin to bolster the strategic reserve, and maybe some of it is kind of used to go back into paying down, quote unquote, the deficit. That could be a couple of options that I could imagine. Worst case scenario, if something were to occur, some kind of black swan comes out of nowhere, it goes into helicopter money, which would be the worst case scenario, as we saw in 2020. So those are a couple of things that I can think of that how they'll approach it. I'd be pretty surprised to see them just smash buy Bitcoin all at once like Michael Saylor.